Hello and welcome to the Profit Podcast. I am your host today, Matt Robinson. I am flying solo, currently recording this during school holidays. So me and Paul tend to do some solo episodes so that it's a bit easier to fit around diaries and kids being off and stuff like that. So anyone else that's out there, kids been off school recently, hope you had a good one. In today's episode, we're going to go through a topic that's very timely. It's almost like a trending topic, so to speak, but I'm going to come at this from a very practical standpoint, not just because it's big at the moment, but because I do think it's going to have a big implication in terms of how you run your business, and not just now, but in the future. So today we're going to talk about how you can use AI to improve your business and how you can do that right now, as in, once you've listened to this episode today, what you can go away and actually do to make this work for you. So it's going to be a very, very practical episode. I want to talk to you about what this actually means for us in its current format. Obviously, it's going to change over time, but with what we've got now, what these things actually mean, what they are and what they aren't. I'm going to go through some specific use cases for fitness businesses, and then we're going to sort of tie that all together. Okay, so it's going to be a slightly different kind of episode than usual because it's more of a technology-based episode, but I do think it's an important one for us to cover, and I think it's something that I might find myself talking about a bit more as we move forwards. And while I'm on the topic of me talking about that a little bit more, the reason for that is that at heart, I am and always have been a complete and utter geek. I love going away and learning about things, especially technology. And it's not just understanding the technology, it's understanding how I can then apply it to my life and my business so that it can improve what I do, and potentially save me time, save me money, increase output, things like that. So I love going away and learning the nuts and bolts and of something and understanding the underlying principles and then bringing it back into our industry to help other people understand it. And that's what I'm hoping to do today with our listeners. And of course, anyone that works with me in sort of a one-to-one fashion, you're going to notice me bringing this into the type of stuff that we do together to help improve your life. So very excited to go through this today. Really interesting topic. Hopefully something that I can share with you in a way that's really easy to understand, because it is a big area, but I'm going to bring to you the bits that I believe are most useful and most important to us as fitness business owners. Final thing I want to say before we go into the main part of the content for today is that, unlike other podcast episodes, today's podcast episode is going to have a visual element as well. Okay. So obviously, if you're listening to this on audio, you're not going to see the visual part. I'm going to explain it so that you can understand it. But if you want to go away today after listening to this and see some of the stuff that I'm talking about, there's going to be a certain part of the podcast where I'm actually sharing my screen and showing you some of the stuff that I've put into this software and some of the things that it spat out and given me on the other side. So if you want to be able to see that, I recommend that you head over to YouTube, find our channel, which is the Profit Podcast. And if you subscribe, you'll then be able to access to today's video. You'll see the episode in full. You'll see me talking on screen, and you'll be able to skip straight to the part that you want to see, where I've got some of the software up on screen that you can use. Okay. So without further ado, let's head in to the main content today. And to start things off, I'm going to talk to you about what AI actually means to us as business owners, especially in the world of fitness, and where we're potentially going to need to start thinking about this as something that we can use on a day-to-day basis. So to start things off, let's look at what AI actually is. Now, AI, as most people know, stands for artificial intelligence. And to many of us, it might seem that AI is obviously like this really new, this really exciting thing. But in reality, artificial intelligence has been around for a long, long time. It's been used in various different ways. It's just that going back over the decades, it's something that was almost held back. And the reason that there's so much fuss around it now is that for the first time ever, a lot of this stuff is becoming accessible to the public in a really easy to use way. And for the most part, a good chunk of it is available free as well. You don't even have to pay for it. Obviously, there's always paid versions of things, but there's a lot of good stuff out there now that's very easily accessible to the general public that we can use freely. And going back over the years, that hasn't been the case. It's always been there. It's always been in use in ways that you didn't always know was there. But it is something that's been around for a long time and has been developing over time. I suppose a really obvious example of it that you might be aware of or not is that something as simple as when you use a social media platform, that social media platform has algorithms behind it that learn your behavior. That's artificial intelligence. So the more you use the platform, the more it understands what content to show you and what content not to show you, because it knows what you like to interact with, who you like to interact with, and what type of content you prefer to interact with. Okay, so it's like a learning model that's going on behind the scenes that you interact with every day, regardless of whether you're aware or not that it's actually there. So this has been around for a long time, this type of stuff. It's just that it's not always been available to us in a way that we can use it. And it's not always been presented in a way that makes it user-friendly. But now we're starting to see things come to market that are freely available to us and we can actually use. And I think the most important thing to talk about when it comes to AI is that it is a tool. Okay, I want to repeat that again. AI is a tool. It's not a magic pill. It's a tool. So we've got to understand how the tool works and what we can use those tools for. And AI is going to take different forms, which will allow us to use these tools in different ways over time. So as you listen to this as the business owner, I want that to be the mindset that you've got going on is, how do I learn these tools? What do these tools do? Where can I potentially use them within my business or within my life to improve things, make things quicker, easier, double my efforts with the same amount of input, all that good stuff. Yeah. AI is just a set of tools, nothing else. A good analogy for this that's from our world is that to us as personal trainers, when it comes to helping people lose weight, we've got lots of tools at our disposal. So one of those tools might be calorie tracking. That's a tool. It's something we can do to help someone lose weight. But to the person on the street that doesn't understand that tool, it's useless. To us, it's a powerful tool because we know how it works, we know what it does, we know why it works, we know where to use it, we know where not to use it. So hopefully you can start to see how that would then apply to something like AI. It's a set of tools that once you understand how they work and how to use them and where they fit, they can be very powerful. But to the person that doesn't yet understand them, they're just something that you're either completely unaware of or you just find a bit overwhelming and a bit confusing. Okay. So hopefully today we're going to change some of that and make this much easier for you to understand as we go forwards. One thing I do want to highlight as well is what AI isn't, and I've sort of already alluded to this, but AI isn't some magic thing that's going to come and fix problems within your business that are like fundamental. If you've got fundamental problems in your business, you're going to have to fix those. This isn't a magic pill. This isn't some sort of like plug this in and you'll suddenly make loads of money or anything like that. So don't be conned into thinking there's any magic going on here. It's essentially a set of systems that you can use to multiply your efforts. I think that's probably one of the best applications we're going to have for it in its current form, is using this to either increase the amount of output we have from the same amount of input, or to save time creating things and generating things and stuff like that. The other use case is maybe just generating ideas and things like that. So we're going to go into use cases later on, but I just wanted to be very clear on what it is and what it isn't. So AI is a tool. It's not a magic pill. That's the long and short of it. There's a lot more that I could go into. There's a lot more that I could sort of geek out on based on what I've been delving into recently and what I've been immersing myself in. But I think for the listeners and for those of you that are watching, that's probably as much as you need to know at this moment in time. So now that we've got that little basic understanding of what it is and what it isn't, and maybe the mindset that we need to have when approaching something like AI, I want to use the biggest chunk of today's episode to actually talk about use cases, because I think this is where this is going to be most applicable to you. It's all well and good going out there and playing around with some of these things, but how are you actually going to use it? What are you going to use it for? What is it going to help you do? And having spent a fair bit of time trying things out and learning things and understanding how these work, I've come up with a few different use cases that I believe are applicable to fitness business owners, personal trainers, anyone that runs a business really can use this, but I want to make it really applicable to what we do and what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to come at this in a couple of different ways. I'm going to split this use cases section in half. So the first half is talking about a specific tool. So one of the tools that most of you will have heard of by now, because it's sort of taken the world by storm, a tool called ChatGPT. So I'm going to talk about that as its own use case and give you a few examples of what you can use that tool for and how you can maybe apply it. And then in the second half of this use cases portion, I'm going to talk about a broad area of business. I'm going to talk about marketing. So using AI to boost your marketing efforts. And when we get to that section, I'm going to talk about how you can use a few different tools and layer them together to massively increase the amount of output you can potentially have from a marketing standpoint and potentially decrease the amount of time you have to spend marketing as well. Okay. So first half is about a specific tool. Second half is about a broader area and how you apply the tools to that area and sort of layer them together. Okay. So first use case we're going to talk about, as I've already mentioned, ChatGPT. Now, for those of you that don't know what this is, that have been living under a rock, this is the fastest growing piece of software or user base ever. Okay. So this AI machine, this platform that was made publicly available, is the fastest growing piece of or tool out there. It's grown ridiculously fast. If you look at how quickly Facebook gained users and Instagram and TikTok, they all gained users very, very quickly. ChatGPT has come along and blown them all out the water. It's gained millions and hundreds of millions of users in a very, very short space of time. Okay. You can go on to the website. You can just type in ChatGPT in Google, which is quite ironic because that's probably what it'll replace eventually. But you can go on there and find it, and you can create an account for free through a company called OpenAI. They're the company that sort of build the software and make it available. And there's a free version on there that you can go in, and it's almost like a chat box. You go in there and you type things in and it spits out answers. And what's really interesting about ChatGPT is that because it's built on like a conversational model, it remembers things that you've talked about earlier on in the conversation. So you almost need to think of this as not just like typing in one question and hoping you get the right answer. It's more like a conversation. So think about if you were having a conversation with a friend or even a client, you're not just going to ask them one question to potentially get the best answer. You might have to ask them a few questions, and you might even have to relate back to some of the previous answers that they've given you to get a better answer further on. So again, talking about mindset and understanding how these things work, that's fundamental when it comes to ChatGPT. So this is a language system that's up to date as of 2020. So it does have limitations in terms of what information it's got, and it will let you know its limitations. It'll let you know. And like any tool, it's only as good as its user. Okay. So something that's really important is that this AI, this ChatGPT, it's not going to replace you, at least not yet. It needs that expert input. It needs that expert to know what to ask it, and then to sort of determine whether or not the answers are actually good quality and factually correct as well. So we can use this to sort of enhance what we do, but it's not going to sort of wholesale get rid of your expertise or anything like that. So don't be scared of that at this moment in time. This is something to enhance you and your knowledge. Okay. So if you go into ChatGPT, you can go in there and start asking questions. You can start giving it prompts. I just want to reiterate that the prompts that you give it are really important. You can be very, very specific, and that'll obviously give you much better answers. If you're too broad, it's going to need a chain of questioning to get better answers. And of course, you can just go on there and ask it random things that are completely useless. You can go on there and ask it to tell you a joke. Great, that might be fun for 8 seconds, but it's not going to improve your life or improve your business. So you want to get quite accustomed to asking it specific things in specific ways, and then referring back to answers that it's giving you above, so that you can start to see how it unfolds and how it learns and how it can help you learn things quicker as well. So in terms of using this within your business, I wanted to look at 3 specific things and like 3 specific use cases for this and where this might help you out. And before I go into these, one little caveat to this is that I do believe that as business owners, as professionals, as practitioners, we should always seek to go and learn things and understand things as best we can. But where I think something like this might come in handy is to start gaining you a bit of momentum. So if there's something you don't know about yet, rather than having to get a bit overwhelmed about sitting and trawling Google and then watching some YouTube videos and maybe referring to a textbook, you can use something like ChatGPT to start getting you going in the right direction and start to almost filter out some of the bits that you wouldn't need to know in order to give someone a decent answer to get started. Okay. So this is the part of the podcast where I'm going to start sharing my screen as well, by the way. So for any listeners that are on audio, this is the bit where the visual will kick in as well. And I'm going to look at 3 use cases for ChatGPT. We're going to look at an exercise example. We're going to look at a nutrition example, and then we're going to look at a coaching example as well. And I'm going to explain it on the audio, but people following along on video will be able to see what's going on my screen. Okay, so for our exercise example, what I've done is I've thought of something that might happen that you could then go away and use something like this and spend 2 minutes playing around with it to get a lot of information really quickly. Okay, so I've thought about, as an example, as an exercise example, you maybe get a text from a client one day and they say to you that they injured themselves last week playing sport or something, they've been to a physio and here's what's wrong with them. Okay, that's the example I'm going to use. So in my example, it's a client that's suffered a strain to their MCL, so their medial collateral ligament of the knee, and they've sent you a text to let you know. They're still going to come to their training in a couple of days' time, but they're just letting you know ahead of time so that you can sort of plan around that. Okay. Now, some of you out there might know exactly what to do with that, because that might be an injury you've suffered yourself or something you've dealt with before. But there'll also be a portion of you that wouldn't know what to do in that scenario. And rather than have to go away and start to understand all the different parts of that or guess your way through it, I thought, well, what if you could use one of these tools and apply it to some of these examples to actually send you off in the right direction? So for those that are watching the video of this, you'll be able to see my screen and you'll be able to see what I did to start solving this problem. Okay, so I opened up ChatGPT and I asked it the following prompt. So this is where you do start to get quite specific with this. So I typed in, if someone has suffered a medial collateral ligament strain of the knee, what movements should they avoid performing? Okay. And then the AI software gave me some fairly decent answers. It talks about not twisting or pivoting the knee, and then it gives you a bit more detail. Might want to avoid squatting, and it tells you why. You might want to avoid any deep knee bends, and tells you again why. You might want to avoid running or jumping. You might want to avoid lateral movement. So it breaks it down into 5 points for me. And then it just reminds me that it's important to consult a medical professional. Okay, so that's sort of question 1. This is where you start to build a conversation with this to start getting better answers. So then I asked it, okay, what movements might help improve the MCL strain? So it knows the information I've already given it. Now I'm asking it the opposite question, what would help it? So again, it gives me a few examples, range of motion exercises, and it gives me a little description of that. Strengthening exercises of the muscles around the knee. It gives me some examples, low impact exercises, balance and stability exercises. And again, for each one of those points, for each one of those 4 points, it's giving me a little bit of input as well. And then again, it's just reminding me it's important to consult a medical professional, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I then went a step further. I then said, okay, using the movements that should be avoided and the ones that may help improve the strain, create a list of exercises someone should perform to improve recovery and include a description of each exercise. So that's a really specific prompt, But that's what you can start to do when you've had a bit of a conversation with this thing. So again, it spits out an answer, and it did it very, very quickly. It reminds me to consult with a professional, but it gives me a list of 6 things. It tells me that I can do some knee extensions, and it gives me an explanation of that. It tells me that I can do some knee flexion and tells me how to do that. It talks to me about a leg press, a hamstring curl, a stationary bike, a balance board. Okay. Now, this is where you have to apply your expertise, because you might read some of that and think, actually, I wouldn't do that with this person, especially if you know the client and you know what they can normally do and maybe some of their normal limitations and stuff. This is where the expert opinion comes in. And it says right at the bottom, after giving me those 6 things, it says, remember to start with low intensity, gradually increase the intensity as the strain heals. If you experience any pain or discomfort, then stop immediately and consult with someone. Okay. So now we're going to apply some expertise to this. And what I've asked it to do is I've said, okay, please use the exercises numbered 1, 2, and 5 from the list above to create a table listing each exercise in one column and the description in another column. And what this has done is it's taken the 3 exercises that I thought were useful, and it's created a little table for me. So down the left-hand side, I've now got 3 exercises. I've got knee extension, I've got knee flexion, and I've got stationary bike. Then next to that, I've got a column that says description, and it's written a little description for me in each of those. Okay. It even gives me some repetition ranges and things like that, which is really interesting. So I've now got a nice little table. Now I could go on forever asking this different things and geeking out on it. But what I wanted to do there, especially for those of you that can see what's on my screen, is I wanted to paint this little picture of how in 2 minutes time, I've gone from receiving a text to getting a simple table of exercises together that I can now include in my client's next program. And if I want to, I can even copy and paste this table, send it over to the client and let them know that these are exercises they're going to need to do on their own time or something like that. Like it's just put it all together for me. I've had to apply a bit of expertise to it to sort of make some judgment calls. But in general, the AI has done all the heavy lifting. Okay. So that's an example that we can do for exercise. And again, you could use this in lots of different ways. Now let's look at a nutrition example. So for this one, again, I went for something really specific to sort of test how powerful this can be. So what I thought I might do here is use ChatGPT to help me out with someone that's got some specific dietary requirements and then help me put something together for them. So the first prompt that I asked it was, please create a list of suitable high protein foods for someone who is celiac and vegetarian. Okay. So if I had a client that came to me and I needed to increase their protein intake, but they said to me, I'm a celiac and I'm vegetarian, I might think to myself, oh God, where do I start? And you have to start looking around and getting lists of foods up and stuff like that. So I put it in here and here's what it came out with straight away. So it says, as a celiac and a vegetarian, it's important that you're getting enough protein in your diet. Here are some high protein foods that are safe for individuals with celiac disease and are also vegetarian. And it lists out 10 foods. Now, if I wanted to, I could probably have asked it, okay, can you give me another 10? And it'd give me another 10. So I've just stuck with these initial 10 because, again, I want to keep this sequence fairly short for the purposes of the podcast. What I then asked it was, please create 3 high protein breakfast ideas for this person. So it knows who the person is because I've already explained it in the conversation. And now it's going to use that list to create 3 breakfast ideas. So it's come up with a quinoa breakfast bowl, and it gives me a little description. It's come up with some tofu scramble, which I'm presuming is like a tofu scrambled egg. And again, it's put that below. And then it's come up with like a chia seed pudding. And again, it's got a little description. Then I've put, now create a shopping list for these 3 meal ideas. And it spat out within seconds a little shopping list for each of those 3 recipes. And again, I could have gone further. I could have then asked it for lunch ideas. I could have then asked it for snack ideas. I could have asked it for dinners or for desserts or whatever. I could have gone the whole hog with this, but I just wanted to sort of give you enough to get some of those creative juices flowing in your brain and start to see how you might use this within your business. Okay, that's a nutrition example. Last example I'm going to share with you is a coaching example. So this is where you might use something like this to help you have better conversations with people. So what I did with this one is I sort of thought to myself, right, what's something that maybe I've come across in the past where if I'd have had this tool accessible to me, it would have made life easier. And I remembered back to when I was much newer in the industry, right back when I first started. I was at a fitness event and I was in a room and I heard John Berardi talking, someone that was an absolute expert at the time and obviously still is now. And he was talking to us about how we can perform better nutrition coaching using motivational interviewing. And at the time, this was quite a new thing in our industry. It was something he'd taken from somewhere else and brought into our industry and was applying it really well for improving compliance. Okay. So I had to go away. I had to read the book on motivational interviewing. I then went on a motivational interviewing course and started applying this to my business. But again, if you wanted to sort of fast forward that process, obviously you still want to go away and learn this stuff properly. But if you wanted to get a bit of initial momentum with it, let's say you listened to something today on this podcast or another podcast, and you wanted to see how you might apply it right away, you can use something like ChatGPT to help you with that. So the prompt that I use, that again is on screen for those that are watching the video, I asked it, using the coaching framework from motivational interviewing, please create a list of exploratory questions I might be able to use with personal training clients to help them uncover why they might be struggling to lose weight. Okay, so very specific, but again, that's how you get better answers. And it spat out 10 questions that I can use. Okay, I'm not going to read them all out, but it spat out 10 questions. And then it reminds me at the bottom, after giving me the answers, it says, remember, the key to motivational interviewing is to listen actively and in a non-judgmental way, and to help the client find their own motivation and solutions for change. So it even starts to explain some of the principles that underpin these questions, so that if you were brand new to the idea of motivational interviewing, you would start to get an understanding of it before you've even read up on it. Okay. I then said to it, which of these questions would make for a great conversation starter on this subject? And it says all of the questions would be a great starter, but then it highlights one. So it says, what would you like to achieve by working with me as your personal trainer? And that's one of the questions it chose. And it explains why that's a good question underneath as well. So again, if you're watching on screen, you'll be able to see that explanation. It gives a little bit of a description as to why that's a good question. I then said to it, okay, please provide me with 3 other examples of great conversation starters on the topic of weight loss using the motivational interviewing framework. So then it's give me 3 questions that I can use to start that conversation. And underneath each question, it's give me a little summary of what that question aims to do. So if I use the first one as an example, it says, so this is one of the answers it's gave me as a question to ask a client. It says, what are some of the things that you feel are holding you back from achieving your weight loss goals? So that's a great question. It's open-ended, all of that. And then it explains underneath, it says, this question invites the client to reflect on their own barriers to success and can help identify internal and external factors that are affecting their progress. So it's giving you an explanation as to why this is a good question. And then it's giving me another 2 of those as well. Okay. So again, this is something where I could have gone further and further down the rabbit hole. You could end up playing with this for hours, but I just wanted to show you enough of an example so that you can start to gain ideas of where you might apply this in your business. You might use this to help you solve problems. You might use this to get ideas. You might use it to actually create specific resources for clients. There's loads of stuff you can use it for. What I sort of wanted and hoped from today is that if you've not yet gone and engaged with one of these pieces of software, is that rather than do what most people do and go on there and use it for something really generic and have a really sort of, I don't know, like a really vanilla experience where you sort of go, oh, well, that's okay, but I can sort of ask Siri those things. I wanted you to be able to come to the platform armed with some ideas and some information about how to use it, so that when you use it for the first time, you're using it in a way that sort of makes you sit back in your chair and go, oh my God, this is unreal. and it makes you excited to want to apply it more and more to your business and help you out as best it can. Okay. Again, if you're going to go to this software and just ask it to tell you a joke or ask it what time it is, it's absolutely useless. But if we go in with the right intentions and understanding how the tool works, we can use it far better. Okay. So that ends the sort of visual component of today's podcast. So that's the bit you would want to go and watch on YouTube if you want to see what was going on my screen. So those are some use cases for that Chat GPT software. Again, this is the one that's taken the world by storm at the minute. It's already been acquired by Microsoft, I believe. They've already paid a handsome sum to get it on board with their system. So we're going to see it used all over the place, and people can freely use it at the moment. So go and create an account, go and give it a try, have a play around with it. But like I say, go on there and try and use it and play around with it with a bit of intention behind it. Don't just go on there to mess around. Otherwise, it's just a waste of time. You're not learning anything. But start to get specific with what you ask it, start to test it, start to see how the conversation builds, and you'll start to generate some really good information, some really good ideas, some really good resources. So that's Chat GPT and how to use it effectively. Okay, so now let's take a little look at how you might apply some different AI tools to like a broad area within your business. We're going to take marketing as the example for this, because we know that for all business owners now, content creation in one way or another is a big part of what we do. We're always creating content. We're always sharing content. We're always distributing content as well in different formats and things. And if you can find ways to create something once and use it in a lot of different ways, that always helps. Or if you can speed up the process of creating content, again, that really, really helps. Going back to Chat GPT as an example, you might go in there and plug in ideas and stuff on there. I'm going to talk you through some examples of that in a moment. But for this marketing example, I think the thing that I really wanted to get across here is how you can sort of use different AI tools, because there's plenty of them out there now that do different things. And then rather than using those tools individually, how you might layer them together to not only increase your output, but then increase the output of the tools themselves. Okay. Again, this is the type of stuff I really geek out on, because if you go and learn them individually, you then start to learn how they might interact together and then how that might produce something that compounds on itself. So that's why this is something that's really interesting to me. So for this example, I'm going to discuss 4 tools. Those tools are Chat GPT, which we've already discussed. Then another piece of software by OpenAI that run Chat GPT. They've got one called DALL-E, which is like an image generator. So it can generate AI images from prompts. So you can type something in and create an image. We've then got one called video.ai, which is a video platform. And then we've got one called Descript, which is like an editing platform powered by AI. Okay, so there's 4 things there. They've all got free versions. There are paid options as well, but you can go and use these freely, which again is why I've chosen these 4 as an example, so that you can go and play around before spending any money on anything. And we're going to look at a few different ways you could use these things to help you produce different types of content. Okay, so the first example is how you would use these to produce social media content. So let's say you wanted to produce a batch of reels at once, or TikToks or YouTube shorts, any sort of short form video content. Or if you wanted to generate like content ideas, here's what you might do. So this is where something like video.ai is really, really handy. And actually, if you follow me on Instagram, some of the most recent reels you'll have seen from me on Instagram, I didn't create them. AI created them using this platform. Okay. So what video.ai allows you to do is it allows you to upload a longer piece of content. So in my scenario, I uploaded the video content from one of our podcast episodes where it's me and Paul on screen, and it will then chop that down into smaller pieces of content for you. So in my example, it created 12 smaller pieces of content that were all less than a minute each, where it's picked out key parts of the episodes and key topics that we're talking about. And then it creates a real formatted video where it's got a bit of a background on it. It's got our faces on there. It captions it for you. It even puts a little timeline along the top where the line moves across so that people know how long's left in the video. And it's all formatted and all done for you in a matter of seconds. So the key to that working is having that longer form piece of content to start with. Now, most of you might sit there and go, well, that's all well and good for you, Matt, but I don't run a bloody podcast. What should I do? What I would do if I was you is I would take some of the content that you've recorded for clients at some point. So let's say you've done a video in the past explaining energy balance or something like that, something that's really common in our businesses. You've probably got this stored on a PT app somewhere or something like that, or on a Google Drive that you share with people. If you've got videos that you've made for clients, you can use those. So you can upload that and then let it spit out 12 different snippets of that piece of content. Just because it's a longer form piece of content doesn't mean it has to be like an hour long or anything. If you've got a video that's like 10, 15, 20 minutes, that's great. Put it in there and it'll chop it down for you. And before you know it, you can play around with some of the formatting and the colors of the background and what the subtitles look like and stuff like that. Before you know it, you can produce a really good set of reels that you can share off the back of that one piece of content that you haven't even had to record because you've already done it. It's already there. So you can do that. Or if you haven't got any longer form piece of content yet, maybe pick a subject that you're keen on talking about, which is all we do with the podcast. It's just subjects we're interested in talking about. And just go away and record a video of yourself talking about that thing. You might have to give yourself some prompts and things along the way, but just record yourself as if you were having a conversation with someone. And that initial piece of content might take you 20 minutes to record, but that then might take care of your video content for the rest of the month, because it's going to spit out so many reels that you can then use and repurpose and all those types of things. You can get them on Instagram, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, wherever else you want to put them. You can actually change the formatting of the video as well so that it would work on other platforms if you wanted to do that. So there's lots of sort of use cases that you can do on that. And then the other thing with sort of social posts is using AI to generate ideas. Okay. So what I thought you might do here is you could use something like Descript, which is this editing software. You could upload that same video into there. And what that'll do is it'll create an editing suite where you can go in and it'll learn about your video. So it transcribes it. It starts to learn your voice as well, so that if you want to overdub any of it, so if you want to change what you've said, it can actually change the words you said because it learns your voice, which is mad, I know, but it's what AI can do. But what you could actually do from this is you could take the transcript, so you could copy and paste the transcript into one of your other AI pieces of software like ChatGPT. You could paste it into there. You could say, using the transcript below, please create 10 social media post ideas from this transcript. So you could use that one piece of content to generate ideas for social media posts, and it'll spit them out for you. In some instances, it'll even tell you what type of images to use and stuff like that. So if you're not just using video on social media, you could then use it to do something like that. One of the things I've played around with as well is getting it to use a transcript to pull out quotes. So use this transcript to pull out quotes about healthy eating. And then you can turn those quotes into quote posts using something like Canva and post them on social media. You can say, use this topic to come up with other potential topic ideas related to this subject. Yeah. So there's loads of things you can do from that one piece of content and use it to produce ideas for other content. And then if we move away from social media, if we look at sort of some of the longer form content you might want to produce using stuff you've already got, like things like emails or articles or even scripts for videos, again, you can use the transcript from this piece of content and you could say, okay, turn this transcript on eating for weight loss into an email sequence of 5 emails teaching someone how to eat to lose weight. And it will spit out 5 emails that you can put into some sort of email software and use as a bit of an email sequence to either help your clients or to sort of generate leads and things like that. You could use it for that. You could use the transcript and say, turn this transcript into an article that sounds like I wrote it. And it'll do it. It will sound like you because it knows what you sound like. You can get it to do that. You can say, use this transcript to create a video script for a short form video that's only 5 minutes long. So it might take that longer piece of content where you've talked about energy balance for 30 minutes and create a script that's now only 5 minutes long, so that you can reshoot that same video in a much more condensed way if you want to, and then use that. Okay. So there's loads of different ways in which you can do that, and you can sort of layer these on top of one another. So you can sort of use one piece of software to generate some stuff for you and then plug it in somewhere else and use that to generate something for you. Going back to that Descript thing as well, when you upload that longer form video, what it allows you to do is during certain sections, if you want to, let's say I was talking about nutrition and I've sort of gone on a bit of a ramble about protein. If it's just me talking to camera, that might be quite boring. So what you can do is you can highlight certain areas and it'll know what you're talking about, and it will suggest like B-roll video that you can play over the top that you can sort of overlay. So as I'm talking about protein, I can actually overlay some video that might show examples of like high protein foods, or like a high protein shopping list or whatever. And it's got a library of videos already within the software that you can just use and plug in, and you just do it at the click of a button. So there's loads of different things you can do to sort of use that original piece of content to create a brand new piece of content, even though it's the same thing being repurposed. Okay. So hopefully this makes sense. And more importantly, I'm hoping that it's actually giving you lots of ideas that you can go away and run with and use in different ways. The final thing I'm going to talk about when it comes to applying this to your business using these tools is I'm going to talk about advertising. So this is for anyone out there that wants to run any sort of paid marketing. This is something I do in my business often. And I've actually got a set of adverts that are running right now on Facebook and Instagram that are AI generated. Okay. So here's what you can do with this type of stuff. So I've got a course that is aimed at helping personal trainers get to the point where they're generating $3,000 a month in their business consistently. Okay. So that's the aim of the course. It's to get you from that up and down phase of your journey and create that stability and that consistency that you want, so that you can then grow from there. You can then scale up from there. You're sort of taking care of all the basics really well. You've got some stability, you've got some security. Okay. That's the aim of that course. So I went into ChatGPT and I said to it, please come up with some headline ideas for an advert that markets the course titled 5 Steps to 3K, which is the name of the course, aimed at new personal trainers who want to build stability, consistency in their business. That's the type of prompt to put in there. And it came up with all these headlines. Okay. So that now becomes the headline that I'm going to use in my advert. I then say, okay, number 5 is my favorite headline, for example. Now write some advertising copy that sells that product aimed at that target market, and it will write the copy for me. I can then make iterations of that copy. So I might say, okay, now make it less than 200 words. Okay, now make it funnier. Okay, now make it more direct. Okay, now bring the reading age down to 7 years old so that anyone can understand it. You can play around with what it does and the inputs it has. You can even make it in the style of someone else. So if there's a particular writer that you like, you can even do that. Like I quite like Mark Manson, the way he writes and the way he puts punchy things together. I even asked it to write that same advert in the style of Mark Manson, and it was able to do it, and it sounded like he'd written it. Okay. So you can do all sorts of stuff. So I had my headline, had the copy for my ad. What I was now missing was some creative. And my advert was talking about the ups and downs of running a fitness business. So the little idea that I came up with in my head, the little theme, was this idea of like being a personal trainer that's riding this business roller coaster. So you're on this roller coaster of ups and downs and ups and downs. And I wanted an image that represented that, or a series of images. But if you go into Google Images and type in personal trainer riding a roller coaster, it's far too specific. You're not going to find anything. So that's where one of the pieces of software that I haven't yet spoke about came in, which is DALL-E, which is this one that's also run by the Chat GPT lot. You can go in there and you can create AI generated art, photos, cartoons, anything you want to do. You can be really specific. I went over there and I typed in generate a photo of a male and female personal trainer riding a roller coaster looking scared, and it spat it out. And then I asked it to do it again, but in a cartoon version, and it did it. I asked for other versions and I picked the ones that I liked the best. Okay. Soon, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to do that with video as well. So if you wanted to create like a video ad, especially with something like Descript, you'd be able to put something together. You're going to be able to create like AI avatars and stuff. There'll be all sorts you can do, but I use this for an image. So I now had a headline, I had the copy of my advert, and I had my image. And I started to run that ad and I started to test it and see how it worked and iterate it over time. Okay. So you can use these tools to get you started with things that otherwise, again, might be a bit overwhelming. It's not going to replace someone that's really good at copywriting. If someone knows how to write marketing copy and they're really good at that, then it's not going to replace that person. But for someone like you and I that isn't a copywriter, that doesn't do marketing all the time, that maybe doesn't sell via the written word, it might give you a way of getting in the game. It might give you a way of getting started so that you can test the water, so that you can actually come up with something that sounds like someone who knows about marketing, and whether or not they, you know, whether it's created something that's usable for you. So that's something that's, you know, a bit more specific. But for those of you that want to dabble in that sort of stuff, maybe that's your opportunity to get started with it. Because if you sit down to write a Facebook ad one day, it's almost like, well, where do I start? Well, here's what I'm trying to sell, or here's what I'm trying to offer as like a free giveaway. What do I do from there? And again, you can just use these AI tools to help you get creative and help you generate ideas, and you start to see it snowball. Once you've got a headline, okay, now create the copy. Okay, now I've got that. What sort of images should I want to produce? And then it'll explain the images, and then you can sort of take some of those descriptions and put it into another piece of software. And it goes on and on and on forever. Okay, so before this becomes ridiculously long as an episode, I always appreciate it's more difficult when there's just one of us speaking, and it's much more difficult to stay engaged for long. And before it gets too long and too confusing, I'm going to call it there in terms of use cases and things like that. Hopefully it comes across that this is something I'm really interested in, really passionate about. So if you do want to reach out with any questions or find out how I'm using this type of stuff in my business, then please do. It could genuinely be its own sort of one-day course that you do, and you start to learn how they work and how to apply it to fitness. Because it's honestly endless the amount of things you could use this for. But what I wanted to do today is just plant some of those seeds in terms of getting you in the right mindset and giving you enough of an understanding as to how these things work, so that you've at least got that foundation to go away and play with them and get started. And then once you have a play around with them, you'll maybe be able to start to see how to interact with it and what it can give you, and where you can sort of get time back and multiply your time and things like that. So that's very much how I'm using it in my business. And it's very much how I'm going to be helping people use it in their business with the trainers that work closely with me. So off the back of that today, a few key takeaways: go away and use some of these pieces of software. I'll name them again for you. We had Chat GPT, easy for me to say, DALL-E, Video.ai, and Descript. They were the main 4 pieces of AI software that I spoke about. There's lots more out there, but they were the ones that I've found really, really useful after trying lots of them. So go away and play with those. Make sure you go and check out the video on YouTube for this specific episode. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button, because again, in future, if ever we're doing sort of video demonstrations, you'll be able to see them on there. It'll be much easier to consume that type of information in that visual format. And if you found today useful, I know we ask this often, but with this being such a different kind of topic than what we've normally covered, And it's the type of thing that I really like geeking out on. Genuinely, if you found today useful, and if it's something you would like to know more about, please drop me a message on Instagram at Matt Robinson PT. Let me know how it was useful, what you found interesting, what you might want to know more about. Reach out. And similarly, if you've suddenly thought, oh my God, I've had my mind blown, I can use this in loads of different ways, please make sure you head over and leave us a rating and review as well, because individual episodes that get those ratings and reviews really help us rank and get discovered by more people. Okay. And obviously this is going to be something that a lot of fit pros want to know about and want to know how to apply to their business. So if we can help more people learn about this, then that's going to be better before they just get sucked into some sort of scammy course that teaches them all these nasty things. They shouldn't be doing it with it. Okay. So hope you enjoyed today. Reach out, get in touch. Let's have a conversation about this sort of things. Show me examples of how you're using it. And until next time, take care of yourself.